Good morning, everybody. We're going to get started in just a couple minutes. All right, good morning, everybody. We're going to get started here with structuring your business. Today's presentation is going to be done by Al Morrison. We are going to send you the slides as well as the recording after later today in an email, so you'll be able to reference those. Oh, let's see what else, Al. We can, Al, do you want to do questions throughout or just wait till the end?
Let's do questions throughout. I'll stop a couple of times and we'll take questions
Perfect.
so that we don't forget.
All
All
right.
right.
So you can type your questions in the Q&A or type them in the chat throughout, and we will answer them during and after Al is done with the presentation. So with that, Al, I will hand it to you.
Handoff accepted. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Structuring Your Business Legally. This takes about a half an hour. So from that, you should say it's really simple. Structuring your business legally is not that complicated. So how are we going to do that today? Well, we're going to start by talking about SCORE. Have to have the commercial at the front. Tell you about the small business, then overview of legal structures, and then we'll talk about them. And I'll stick around at the end to answer any questions that anybody might have. So SCORE is a nationwide organization, US based. It's a resource partner of the SBA, or the Small Business Administration. We have about 10,000 volunteers spread over 225 chapters across the country. Locally, we serve Mahoning, Medina, Portage, Summit, and Wayne counties, and we have over 30 folks here based in the Akron area. Since we started in 1965, we've helped here in Akron, in the 5-county area, over 50,000 local clients to start their business, grow their business, sell their business, manage their business, and everywhere in between. SCORE does two things. And our mission is to foster vibrant small businesses, and we do it through two things: mentoring and education. And our vision is that every person, every business has the resources and the support they need to thrive as a small business. Our vision, every person, every business. We're nowhere near that, but we've been at it since 1964 as a SCORE organization. And so we'll continue to do that until hopefully we get everybody that wants to have a business has one. We do two things. We do counseling, mentoring, and education. Counseling and mentoring is free. Really important fact. It's confidential between you and your advisor. It's almost all of our advisors have had real world jobs, real world experience. And sometimes you can call and ask a question, we'll answer your question, but I've had clients that I've been working with for over 12 years now. Our education, you're attending one of our webinars right now on structuring your business, but we do starting your business, managing business, business planning, marketing, not-for-profit basics, QuickBooks, and others. So if you go to our website, which is akron.score.org, you'll be able to find anything that's currently in our offering list, and you can register right there online. And as Laura said, we're going to send you the slides afterwards, but if you want to get a SCORE mentor, go to akron.score.org, or you can call our office. And because you get a copy of the slides, you don't have to copy those numbers down. In the US today, there are over 27 million small businesses. And we get hundreds of thousands of them started every year in the United States. We help new clients out of our office at the rate of about 2.5 every business day come in our front door, or at least come into our website or our telephone. Small businesses represent 99.8 of all businesses based on the employer identification number. 99.8 of the businesses in the US are small businesses. And maybe most important is the last one here, that small businesses create over 75% of new jobs. So it's not the big companies that are creating the new jobs, it's the small businesses creating new jobs. And we create new jobs every single day. It's a really important engine for economic growth. And there are lots of things that a small business can do that you can't send to China or Korea. They just can't be done. My barber down the street, there's no way I can get my hair cut in China. So small businesses are a very, very important part of the American economy. So if you're going to start a small business, how would you structure that? Well, there's a couple of ways to think about that. The first one is you could have a bootleg company. And when I had my lemonade stand out in front of my house back in the day, I made the lemonade and mom get me the cups, and I'd sell it and put the money in my pocket and nobody would be the wiser. That's not something we recommend you do today. The things that matter, though, are personal ownership or corporate ownership. That's really the two fundamental ways to own a business. We do not for profit in a separate webinar, but that's another way of structuring a business, but it's very different than a for-profit business. So the two fundamental ways that you can own a business is you can own it personally, and you can have it as a corporation. So there's two fundamental ways to do that. What's the difference? And the only things that matter are legal liability and taxes. So with your personal ownership, if you own the business personally, and that might look like a sole proprietorship or a partnership, you are personally liable if the wheels come off the bus. The taxes, though, are relatively simple. Corporate ownership protects you. It puts a wall up between you and the outside world. So that if something goes wrong, wheels come off the bus, and somebody decides to sue you, it stops at the wall of that corporation. So they can't get through to get to you and your house and your car and your kids and your cat. And so if there's very little risk, then I would suggest personal ownership, like a sole proprietorship. If there's some risk, then I would suggest that you form a corporation, and we'll talk about those different kinds of corporations. So how might that work? The example that I use is I had a piano teacher who would come to your house and teach piano on your piano in your living room, teach your kids. And because there'd be very, very little liability for that, she had a sole proprietorship. It was very successful at it, but she was so successful that she realized she could see more clients, more customers, more kids, and teach them piano if they came to her house in her living room with her piano. But then mom is going to be walking up her steps, piano teacher steps, and might slip on the ice, slip on a rock, trip on a rug. So there's a certain amount of liability involved. So the piano teacher decided that she was going to form a corporation to give her that level of protection. So those are the fundamentals of the difference between personal ownership and corporate ownership. Let's take them one at a time. If you're going to do bootleg, like the lemonade stand, you've got to fly under the radar. It's probably got to be a cash business. You don't pay any taxes, but the risk is all on you. If anything goes wrong, it's all on you. And if you get caught by the IRS because you're taking money under the table, that's never a good thing. Never, never a good thing. Now, it's really hard to have investors. It's hard to go public. It's hard to do anything if you're a bootleg. So it's definitely not recommended by either myself or the SCORE organization. We just don't recommend you do that. So let's talk about personal ownership. There's a couple of ways you can do that. You can have a sole proprietorship, which means it's one owner, which would be you probably. You can have a general partnership, which would be multiple owners. With that, you can have an unlimited number of partners, and they're called partners or owners. You can add or delete partners at any time. It's a very simple process. However, for legal liability, all the partners, all the owners are totally responsible and they share the risk equally. And as I said with a piano teacher, it's fine if it's a low risk business. Uh, for taxes, the owners pay taxes on their 1040. It's very simple. It's single taxation, and it really doesn't get any easier than that. So if you've got a low risk business, certainly sole proprietorship, personal ownership is the best way to go because in terms of taxes, it's simple, 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 and you only get taxed once, and it doesn't get any easier than that. Corporate ownership, and there are some basic types. There's the LLC, the limited liability corporation, S corp or C corp. As far as legal liability goes, the corporation takes total responsibility for that. So they can never get to you. The owners are fully protected. And as with the piano teacher teaching kids in her living room, mom's walking up her slippery driveway, it's best if there's some risk involved. The taxes can, depending on the form of your corporation, get complicated. It's possible in the case of a C corporation, the corporation pays taxes and then get money, you pay taxes. So it's double taxation. But the reduced risk of any form of a corporation may well be worth it. So with those two fundamentals, personal ownership or corporate ownership, I'm going to stop and see if people have any questions.
All right, everybody, you can type in your question or yeah, type them into the chat or the Q&A. So far, nothing, Al.
Okay. I'm pretty good, but I don't think I'm that good. So there must be a question or two out there. But if there's not, we'll move on. And if you have a question,
Oh,
we go.
okay. Somebody wrote something, but Sheila, can you, is that a question?
I have a business name. Good
Yeah.
for you. Congratulations. That's the first step in starting any business because you have to have a name. If you're going to register your company as either a LLC or a sole proprietorship, you probably should have a name. Probably need a name for marketing purposes also.
She says, how do I change it to an LLC?
Uh, you can't change from one type to the other. You have to defunct the first one and open up your business as another entity. So you can't change from one to the other. And I'm not quite sure why, but that just doesn't, you can't change from anything to anything. You have to defunct the first and then go into form a second one.
All right, we got a couple more questions. My question is, I own a small IT company and I started it as an S corp. Do you guys have training or help to help me actually build the structure of it properly to add the right people? Add the correct people as board members. I'm looking to gain federal funding in the hub zone under your July certification for East Cleveland, Ohio to build a tech hub.
The answer is yes, we can. So I would go to the website or call a phone number and get yourself an advisor that will walk you through it, help you with it step by step all along the way. So an advisor is yes, we do that is the answer. Yes, get an advisor.
All right. Can you explain more on the corporate ownership? Who will be responsible for the taxes and all other risks?
The corporation is responsible for paying all the taxes. It falls back on the owners that should make sure that happens. Uh, but it's the corporation's responsibility to file those taxes and then pass the winnings or losses, profits or losses onto the owners of that corporation. And as far as risk goes, the corporation again takes all the risk because it puts that wall up between you and the outside world. So they can't get through to you. The term that the lawyers use is the corporate veil. You can't pierce the corporate veil. So you can't get through that to you. Now, they can take the corporation and take all the assets so that the corporation has no money or no assets. But if you had a building, for example, that was owned by the corporation and you got sued, they could take your building. But there are, again, ways to set that up so you don't.
I've had a business EIN with sole proprietors and want to change it to an LLC. Can I keep the same EIN number?
You cannot. You'll need a new entity and a new EIN. You can't change from one to the other.
Let's see. What would a social enterprise be considered?
A social enterprise sounds to me like that would be a not-for-profit entity, 501c3. The 501c3 is a not-for-profit company. And it's set up entirely differently than a for-profit in terms of the way you register it. But the way you operate it from just an operations P&L standpoint is absolutely no different than you would a for-profit business. The difference is when there's money left over with a not-for-profit, it's called surplus. And in the case of the for-profit, it's called profit. But everything exactly the same.
Um, I think this is the last one and then we'll move on. Can I keep my business name and just add LLC? If not, if I only have a business name, what are my liabilities for just the business name?
Uh, the implications of what you just said is the business name, if that's all you've got, it would be a sole proprietorship. You would own it. And then you are personally liable for any damages that might occur in the conduct of your business, whatever that might be. And if it's a low risk business, then that's fine. If it has some risk involved, then I would recommend that you form a corporation.
All right, let's continue and then we'll answer more
Okay.
questions. Some of them get answered as we go along, so.
So let's talk first about the S corporation. S corporation, you can only have 100 shareholders, owners. They have to be U.S. citizens, which is probably not a problem. There can't be any foreign ownership. You raise money through the sale of stock. You must have a board of directors. In the case of an S corp, it's single taxation, so it's pass-through taxation. In other words, it comes directly to the shareholders with no corporate taxes being paid. There can be a fair amount of administration. If you've got a lot of owners, you probably are going to need an annual audit, although it's not mandated. The owners may want it, especially if the owners aren't involved in the business. So an S corporation is it gives you all the protection of any corporation. The C corporation, that's the big daddy. That's the General Motors and the Fords and the Maytags and the Enrons, the big companies. You can have an unlimited number of shareholders. They can also be international because GM has shareholders from all over the world. You raise funds again through the sale of stock. You must have a board of directors. Here, there's a lot of administration involved. The Securities and Exchange Commission division of the federal government has oversight. And anytime you have government oversight, you have administration and administrivia and lots of work. An annual audit is mandatory, so you must do an audit. Annual audits are not cheap. So you want to think about that. And in this case, you're subject to double taxation. How does that work? So take General Motors, they make a bunch of money, they pay taxes on that income at the corporate tax rate. Then they pass the money on what's left to the owner shareholders, and then you get dividends and you pay taxes on that. So the money from a C corporation is taxed twice before it gets into your pocket. For big corporations, that's the way to go because they raise money through shareholders. But for us little guys, that is not necessarily the best way to to form your business. The best way is the limited liability corporation or the LLC. Terminology wise, it's owned by members. The owners are called members. The money you raise comes from the members. They all kick in. You can add or subtract members at any time. And it's really the best of all worlds for a small business because it's the easiest to set up. It's the simplest setup. You get the full corporate veil protection. The IRS, don't be confused, calls it a disregarded entity for tax purposes. In other words, it's pass through. The corporation pays no taxes. The corporation doesn't report any taxes. It passes directly through to the members or owners. You can't go public. You can't sell stock. So you must be an owner. It must be a member. And it may not be right if you want to do business internationally. But again, that's a subject for another webinar. So it's really the best of all worlds for a small business. And I say that because I've got 4 of them. Okay. When thinking of forming your business legally, you want to think about only 2 things: who's legally liable and how do I pay my taxes? And the forms are sole proprietorship, that's just you; general partnership, which is you and some of your friends or whatever; the LLC, the S Corp, or the C Corporation. And last but not least is the bootleg, but is definitely not recommended, although some people do it. Definitely not recommended because the risk is very high. Okay. So, questions. So in 21 minutes, you are now all experts in how to form a business entity legally.
All right, let's see. See where I left off. If I already have a business, can I just add another one to it?
Uh, you you can't add another business to it. You can form another business, and the owner is the parent company, or you can do a doing business as, which is just the name of an entity that lurks below your main corporate heading. So there's a couple of ways to do it. Tax wise, there's no difference. Liability wise, there's no difference. So it's a personal preference.
I have family property that I want to develop. Can my family put it in an LLC?
Yes, they can. They can. Yes, they can just put it in, and the LLC becomes the owner. I'd probably sell it to the company for $1, but yes, the answer is yes, they can.
How do I cancel an EIN number in another state and set up an EIN in Florida?
Uh, if you're trying to do that for your same company, you can't. The EIN goes with the company and stays with it forever. Uh, However, having said that, the EIN doesn't care where you're located. It's attached to the business. You can operate the business anywhere you want, wherever it's, even though it's registered maybe in Ohio or Florida or some other place.
Um, do we legally have to have a physical office or any other physical facilities for either of personal or corporate ownership?
The answer is, if you're going to form an LLC or a sole proprietorship, it's going to want a address. And the address cannot be a post office box. It must be a physical address. It can be your house, it can be your apartment, but it can't be a PO box. So the answer is yes, you kind of do. You don't have to. It doesn't have to be a business as such, like a storefront. It can be your home. It can be your apartment. It could be your garage, as long as it has a physical address, because they do not allow PO boxes to register your business.
Next question, how can you get protection with an LLC?
You get it automatically. Once you form an LLC, the company automatically is protected, or you're protected by that corporate veil, and that's the wall that the LLC sets up between you and the outside world.
Okay, the next question, Richard, it's a really long question, sort of related, sort of not. So I'm going to tell you, Richard, that you need to get a mentor.
I'm looking at the question. I think the answer is mentor would be fine. I think you might even want to talk to an accountant, a CPA, given what you've got going on here. And if you haven't paid your taxes in 23 or 24, I would definitely get myself a CPA to help me work through that so that you minimize the penalties. Uh, and I will tell you that the IRS this in 23 and 24 have gotten a little tighter on penalties than they used to be. And I think that's because they've hired a bunch of new agents. So I would encourage you to get professional help with your taxes.
When you make someone a member, does that mean providing them equity for an LLC?
In an LLC, yes. Well, they have ownership. If by equity you mean ownership, yes, they would have a percentage of the business. And that's how you decide to divide everything up at the end of the day, is that percentage of ownership that they would have. So the answer is yes, they have ownership in the company. If you could call that equity if you want.
Would I form a corporation using the same name as the business?
Uh, you have to. And so when you file for your LLC with the state of Ohio or most other states, the first thing you do is you pick a name. The second thing, the website will then check to see if that name is free in the state in which you're registering. If it's free, then you have it. Then you form the business using that business name. If it's a sole proprietorship, you don't have to have a business name. You can use your personal name, which makes it even simpler.
When is the right time to change from a sole proprietor to an LLC?
As soon as you realize that your business has a certain amount of risk involved in it. So my piano teacher, before she had any students come to her home, she formed her LLC. And so if you're going to do something where there's some risk involved, I would suggest you form the LLC before you actually do any business.
If only members can fund an LLC, can you accept grants?
Sure, you can accept grants. Uh, a grant, by definition, is money that the person does not expect to get back again. Uh, with an LLC, that grant that they give you or that donation is not tax deductible. Only money given to a 501c3 is tax deductible, or a not-for-profit entity. So, yeah, they could give you a grant. I mean, if Uncle George wants to give you a couple of $100, that's fine. But Uncle George can't expect it to get it back again uh, unless he makes a loan. So, yes, you can, but you won't find many people that want to do that. You might. You can do that. It's perfectly legal.
Please explain how LLC is taxed. I thought you said LLCs are double taxed,
I'm
tax on
sorry.
corporation and personal taxes. I think I misunderstood something.
Yeah, I may have misspoken, but LLC is not double taxed. It's only single taxed. It's a pass through entity. So the income, expenses, and so forth pass directly to you and your personal taxes. The way that is done is through a Schedule C. So the LLC business fills out a Schedule C, but that Schedule C is attached to your personal 1040. And the profits or losses from that LLC go directly to your 1040. So it's only taxed once.
Okay, Let me check here. Are there any? No, I think you said.
I think I see one. I think you said the LLC does not report or pay taxes. Not true. Well, the LLC as an entity does not. It passes through the owner, and the owner pays the taxes. And that's the Schedule C, which is attached to your personal taxes. And then your federal taxes are paid that way, and the federal taxes are based on your adjusted gross income from your state, from your federal taxes. State taxes are based on your federal taxes.
Okay, are there any trainings on how to set up your LLC step by step in Ohio?
Uh, no, and there isn't any because it's so simple. Um, I've talked people through it in 20 minutes. It's just that simple. Any of our any of our mentors can talk you through that, and it's very simple. It really is very simple.
Let me so this is from a previous question, I guess. I couldn't find it. Let me rephrase. I have an EIN that I've been using for the last 25 years as a sole proprietor. I just registered with the state as LLC as of yesterday with the same name and current EIN. Do I need another EIN with the same name for LLC, or is that possible?
I'm surprised you got an EIN for your sole proprietorship. Usually, people just use their social security number. Uh, but having said that, if you have been using that EIN for your sole proprietorship, then you're going to need a different name and a different EIN for the new LLC entity. So every legal entity has its own EIN, or in the case of a sole proprietorship, it's usually a social security number, which is the same thing for tax purposes. Uh, so again, when you form a legal entity, that legal entity is there with its EIN uh, until you do something to terminate it. So it's there forever. And you cannot, again, change from one to the other. And you can't reuse that EIN with a different legal entity. Uh, so if you think about your personal life, if your parents were smart when you were born, they got you a social security number. That social security number stays with you for your entire life. Uh, you can't give it to somebody else. You can't change it. It's yours for life. The same is true with a legal entity. It's given an EIN when it's born. It stays with it for the life of that legal entity.
Do I need
Okay.
insurance as a sole proprietor?
Do you need insurance? If need means legally, the answer is no. But if you don't, you put yourself at risk. Uh, in the same way, if you drive a car, you'd be crazy not to have liability insurance. Uh, because if you get an accident and you get sued, they can take your house, car, kids, cat, everything. So the insurance is your first line of defense. Said differently, if somebody sues you, whoever you are, without insurance, you start paying the legal bills from day one. If you have insurance, guess who pays the legal bills from day one? The insurance company. So, although you may not choose to have insurance, which is fine on your business, but if something happens and you have legal bills, you will have to pay those legal bills. So I carry insurance just to make sure that I don't have to pay legal bills. Legal bills tend to be very expensive.
Okay, I want to register in Florida because it's income tax free state. Should I shut down my EIN in New York and start a new LLC in Florida?
Yes, yes, you should.
Okay. If you're doing business at other businesses as a sole proprietor, are you responsible for liability that happens at that business property?
Um, if you're doing business, let's say it's Al, I'm a sole proprietorship, and I'm doing business uh, in an office building in downtown Akron and I do something wrong, and if the building owner isn't going to get sued, it's me that's going to get sued. So the answer is, uh, if something happens on that property you're working at and it's your fault, or they can think it's your fault, or want to try to prove it's your fault, uh, then I would strongly recommend that you have insurance for that. Uh, Now, if you're working at a property and I don't know, something happens that you're not responsible for, it happened on a different floor, you weren't even there, and that other business is responsible for it. So
Does, oh, sorry.
think about a parking garage. You're in a parking garage. If you run into another car in a parking garage, you're responsible for that damage. However, if some other patron runs into another car, you're nowhere around. It's on that other patron or the parking garage.
Okay. Does a business pay taxes on a grant they receive?
A for-profit business pays taxes on all income, grants, sales, whatever income they get is taxed. It's only the 501c3 that isn't taxed on its income.
All right. For professional services company, do you need additional malpractice insurance in addition to liability, or are those the same thing?
Uh, Liability is malpractice insurance and vice versa. And again, it depends on what you're doing, whether that is risky or not. Like my piano teacher, it's very low risk. That's a professional service. Uh, if you're cutting hair with sharp knives, then I would say you might want to think about having protection from an LLC and insurance. Uh, and my view of the world is, in business, Mr. Murphy had a lot to say about that, because Murphy's Law says anything that can go wrong probably will. And so it's on you if you're a sole proprietorship.
Okay. Do you have to file your LLC in the state in which you reside?
No, you do not. Take that back. I think in Ohio you do. I'm not so sure of other states. Uh, so in Ohio you need to be a resident of Ohio to get an Ohio LLC, but you can do business with that LLC anywhere in the country.
All right. And if you're married and you go on to into business together, if you set up an LLC, did a partnership LLC that you need, wait, okay, if you set up an LLC, did a partnership LLC that you need to register, which in turn then you need a K1, or can it still be a sole proprietorship filed on a Schedule C?
An LLC, uh, if you're the sole owner and the single member, you file at Schedule C. If you and your wife are in it together, now there are two members, and if you're filing jointly, then you'd file together. If you're filing separately, then you would have to divide the profits up based on the percentage of ownership between you and your wife.
Does a professional proprietor who provides a professional service need a vendor license?
I would check with the county in which vendors' licenses are issued to see if the specific service that you're providing requires a vendor's license. And there's 88 counties in Ohio, and I'm pretty sure they're enough different that you'd want to check with your local county auditor would be the place you'd go. Call their office and see what they tell you.
When you set up a multi-member LLC, are articles required and are they filed anywhere?
Articles, yes, you should have articles explaining how that is going to operate in terms of the owners and their ownership percentage and so forth and so forth. Yes, but I would recommend that you definitely have an operating agreement.
I'm not the business owner, but I pay all the financial expenses. Is there a way that I can be added as an owner or own a portion of the LLC?
Sure. Uh, you go to the state Secretary of State's website in Ohio and just uh, add yourself as a member, or the owner can do that. You can't, the owner, but the owner can add you as a member. So the answer is yes. If you're paying all the expenses, I certainly want to have ownership.
Does sole proprietors have to file taxes yearly?
Yes, just the same as you personally have to file taxes yearly, so does the sole proprietorship.
If the sole proprietor does not conduct any events or business in the year, are you required to file taxes for that year?
You are not. Uh, if I've been filing taxes and 1 year I don't have any income or do any business and I don't file taxes, you're probably going to get a reminder letter from the IRS that you didn't file them. So you might be better off to file for the business that year with 0 in the bottom line income and just clip it to your regular taxes so they know that you at least filed and had no income. Uh, and that's because the IRS can't tell the difference between you should have filed and didn't and don't have to file. They can't tell the difference because it looks the same to them. There's no paperwork. So if it were me and I'd been filing taxes for a couple of years and I have 1 year where I don't need to file them, I'd still file anyway with just 0 in all the columns. File it with my regular taxes.
If
Save you
you
doing a nasty gram.
Okay. If you have artwork and land, can they be the same LLC holding company?
Yes. Mm-hmm. LLC can own anything: cars, boats, trains, planes, automobiles, artwork, land. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Are wait, I think I lost one. Oh, no, I didn't. Are there some must-haves in the operating agreement, or is it whatever the members agree on?
It's whatever the members agree on. Uh,
Okay.
I would certainly, in those, have a clear statement of how things are divided at the end of the year. I would clearly have ways uh, that you add new members, and certainly have ways that you can take a member out if the majority wants that person out. So it would look similar to a partnership agreement, and that's a whole different discussion. Uh, because when you've got multiple people, uh, you need to worry about three things. How do you get into this? How do you get people out? How do you get out? And how do things happen while you're operating? Like, how do big decisions get made? I would certainly have that in the operating agreement.
Do you have any referrals for legal services or childcare business? Oh, I'm sorry, legal services for childcare businesses.
I do not. Uh, if you're looking for that kind of a specialty, the bar association in your local area is a great resource for that. I mean, it's just an absolutely terrific resource. You call the bar association and tell them what you're looking for, and they'll give you a list of lawyers that you can call. In that case, I would interview three and pick the one you like.
Is an LLC required to have articles of corporation or records that have to be kept?
Articles of incorporation for sure, and you need to keep your tax records for some number of years. Just like your personal taxes, you should keep your receipts and your records for 4, 5, or 6 or 7 years.
If you get paid darn it. If you get paid as a sole proprietor with a DBA, do you just file taxes in your own name?
I'm not absolutely sure of this, but I don't think a sole proprietor can have a DBA. It's got to be in your name as the sole proprietor. But in any case, you always, with the sole proprietorship, file taxes in your own name.
What's considered income when filing income? If you have no profit, do you still file taxes? Also, where can sole proprietor insurance be purchased?
Any insurance agent should be able to help you with purchasing sole proprietor insurance. Uh, so I'd look around. Uh, what's considered income? Um, any money that comes in to the business as a course of doing business, which would be sales, are all considered income. I mean, whether it comes in the form of cash or checks or money orders or green stamps, income is income.
All right, does SCORE have a sample operating agreement for an LLC?
We do not, but if you go to the internet, I think you'll find there's a couple out there that I've seen that are free as a starting point. Then you can, if you want to, you can spend some money with LegalZoom or one of the other ones that'll do it for you for a fee, but it's relatively inexpensive.
All right, we're all caught up, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
You will receive a video recording of this as well as the slides for you as a reference. Al, thank you for being here.
It's fun. Good questions,
I
folks. Good questions.
I am moving on to the next workshop, but Akron is doing another workshop right after this on Facebook for marketing, social media. So if you're hopping onto that one, I'll see you in a little bit. If not, everybody have a great day.
Well done, Laura.
All right, I'll see you later, Al.
Okay, bye bye.
Bye.